in the lore of Megadeth, I mean, you get the credit for kind of saying, hey, let's not call the band Fallen Angel, let's go with Megadeth. You know, do you remember kind of that day and kind of saying, hey, let's do this, and then maybe dropping the A and all that stuff?
I do. We were sitting down in our little apartment, and like David mentioned, Dave had read a pamphlet by Senator Alan Cranston talking about the arsenals of Megadeth. And I think that really triggered something in him about nuclear war and just how devastating it was and everything. And I remember thinking, holy shit, the arsenals of Megadeth. And he had that line in the lyrics, and it just occurred to me, Megadeth. I'm like, that would be a cool name for a band. And I sat down, and at the time, and I still kind of feel this way, although I don't know, my attitude about it sort of softened. But I was like, do you really want the word death in the name of your band? Do you really want that? It seems kind of negative karma-y to me back then. That's what sort of was in my head, So I sat down and I just wrote it out as one word, and I dropped the A out, and I just wrote it on a piece of paper. I was like, I think this is cool. We could call the band Megadeth, one word. We take out the A. It's unique. It doesn't have any, sort of dark connotation around it. And I think people would see it and not be put off. It wouldn't put people off. And I think at that point in time, to sort of, I think, to break through in a commercial sense without just completely selling yourself out, I think there were barriers that would have, I'm not sure Capitol Records was ready to sign a band called, Death at the time, or, with that.
For sure.
And maybe not. But I mean, even when after all this, and I came back and I formed Kubla, and we were shopping demos around, we kept getting stuff back sent to us saying, this is way too heavy. This isn't commercially acceptable. We can't sign you. This would never sell, And Dave didn't like it. He didn't like it at first. I presented to everyone, and I remember Laura was like sitting over by the window, and you and Dave and I were like talking diligently about the band, and Laura's sitting over there like looking out the window. But Dave didn't like it at first.
Mm-hmm.
It took him a couple of days, and then I remember a couple of days later he came back and he's like, yeah, this is growing on me. And that's sort of how it came about. I mean, that's a story. It was a quick little thing. And
yeah, because I remember we used to rehearse. Somehow by now we'd had Dijon Carruthers was in the band. We would go over, we'd drive past Forest Lawn over to Glendale, and we would rehearse. And it was basically you, me, and Dave and Dijon, because Dijon was really into Cozy Powell, and he loved Les Binks from especially the Stained Class album by Judas Priest. So there was a synergy there with that. He hung with his girlfriend Judy a lot, so he wasn't around always a lot as we were hanging. But yeah, I remember coming back to the apartment, and that whole idea came up about a band name. And I just remember you were sitting there kind of like looking around going, I think we should call the band Megadeth. And I remember Laura going, whoa, fuck, Megadeth, fuck, that's heavy, fuck, it's about the heaviest name at that time was Black Sabbath, and that was dark. And I remember the call to my mom and dad, we're talking one day, and it was the old, oh yeah, so how's school going? It's like, yeah, we decided not to go to school, one of those, the call, and we met this guy, and he was in this band Metallica, kind of giving him the whole backstory, they're immediately very skeptical, because people from the Midwest would go out to California and join religious cults and shave your head and become a loony, and we were always warned, don't get into one of those cults. And here we are starting one of our own called Megadeth, right? And and I remember, what's the name of the band? It's like Megadeth, it was, how do you tell your parents you just started a band called Megadeth? Like, that's just completely, especially for the nice Protestant Lutherans of Jackson, Minnesota. It's just like, hellfire and fucking, denouncing your, birthright.